7 nights in the castle of horror expanded and terrifying version. The wind howled like a mad wolf, howling a terrible song of death as I stepped onto the porch of the ancient castle. Its towers, black and gloomy, pierced the clouds like the sharp claws of a devil, and its windows, empty and dark, stared at me with an unkind expression, like the eyes of the dead. I was cold, not only from the piercing wind, but also from the horror that gripped my soul like an icy spider. I accepted the challenge to spend 7 nights in this castle, shrouded in a terrible reputation. According to legend, a cruel count, Albert von Bleistein, once lived here, whose name meant pale stone. His cruelty knew no bounds, as he conducted horrific experiments on people, searching for the elixir of immortality. His ghost, they said, still roams the towers, looking for new victims to quench his thirst for knowledge and eternal life. The first night was a living hell. Every creak of old wood, every rustle of the wind scared me to death. It seemed to me that I could hear footsteps in the corridors, and terrible shadows crept in the darkness, trying to catch me. I could not sleep. I just lay in bed, waiting for the horror that was about to happen. The next nights were no better. Each of them brought new horrors, more terrible than the previous ones. I had terrible dreams, woke up from screams that echoed from empty rooms, like the groans of tortured souls. It seemed to me that someone was constantly watching me, that I was not alone in this castle. One night I woke up to find someone standing by my bed. I could not see the face. I only felt the cold breath on my neck, from which my hair stood on end. I screamed in horror, and the creature disappeared, like the night swallowed up by the darkness. During the day, I explored the empty rooms of the castle, looking for answers to the questions that tormented me. I found old books, covered with centuries of dust, which described the Count's horrific experiments, his obsession with life, and the terrible secrets that were hidden in the depths of the castle. One day I found a secret passage hidden behind an old panel in the wall. Fear gripped me, but curiosity won out. I descended the stairs that led into the darkness, as if into the abyss of hell. The dungeon was a terrible place. The walls were covered in moss and mold, and the air was damp and heavy, permeated with the smell of rot and death. I walked down a dark corridor, holding a candle in my hand that cast terrible shadows on the walls, and suddenly I heard a terrible sound, the grinding of metal, from which goosebumps ran down my skin. I followed the sound and found myself in front of a massive iron door, rusty from time. Tearing the rusty lock off its hinges, I opened the door and stepped into the room. What I saw there frightened me to the depths of my soul, made my knees weak, and nausea rose to my throat. The room was filled with surgical instruments, their sharp shapes gleaming in the dim light of my candle. But even worse was the table in the center of the room. On it lay the terrible remains of human bodies, dismembered and sewn together into grotesque forms. Some of the bodies still seemed fresh, their faces frozen in screams of unspeakable pain. In the corner of the room I noticed a large mirror, its surface dim and covered in cobwebs. But when I approached, I suddenly saw a reflection. I wasn't there. Instead, in the mirror stood a tall, thin man in old-fashioned clothes, his face pale and his eyes burning with an ominous red light. Count von Bleistein. He slowly turned to me, his lips stretching into a predatory grin. He spoke in a hoarse voice that sounded like it came from the world of the dead. Are you interested in my work? Wonderful. Perhaps you will make a wonderful addition to my collection. I screamed and threw myself back, but there was a wall behind me. The door disappeared. I was trapped. The Count slowly approached, his footsteps echoing on the stone floor, like the bell of death. I raised the candle and threw it at him, but the flame only slid over his body, doing no harm. Suddenly, another sound came from the darkness, the grinding of metal. A hole appeared in the ceiling of the room, from which an iron cage began to descend. In its center I saw sharp blades that gleamed in the dim light. The cage descended slowly, getting closer and closer to me. I knew that I was doomed. There was no escape. I closed my eyes and waited for the inevitable end. The Count stopped and, raising his head in surprise, said, "But this is not my work." The cage began to descend lower, and I realized that he was not in control of this deadly trap. Someone else also dwells in this terrible castle, a mysterious creature, even more terrifying than the ghost of the Count. I closed my eyes, waiting for the inevitable death. But instead of pain, I felt only a strong gust of wind. When I opened my eyes again, I saw that the cage had stopped a few inches from me. A figure emerged from the darkness. Tall, wrapped in a cloak, with a hood covering his face. She looked at me in silence. Count von Bleichstein was furious. He shouted at the figure, "Who are you? And what are you doing here?" The figure extended his hand, and an old, yellowed parchment appeared in it. The Count read it and cursed. Then he crumbled to dust, and with him the room. I was left alone with the mysterious figure. She took off her hood, and I saw a face. My own face, but old, wrinkled, with eyes full of unspeakable pain and horror. The old me whispered, "Save yourself, before it's too late." I looked around and realized with horror that I was in a cemetery. Tombstones surrounded me on all sides, dim moonlight illuminating their gloomy faces. Suddenly I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. Turning around, I saw a tall figure approaching me. It was Count von Bleichstein. His eyes burned with an ominous red light, and a predatory smile appeared on his face. "Did you think you could escape?" he said in a hoarse voice. "No one escapes from my castle." He reached out to me, and I felt his cold fingers grip my neck. I tried to break free, but his grip was too strong. "You will be my new exhibit," he whispered. "Your beauty will be preserved forever in my collection." I felt life slowly leaving me. My eyes dimmed, and I plunged into darkness. The next morning, the peasants who went to the field found the body of a young girl in the cemetery. Her face was calm, and a terrible grimace was frozen on her lips. No one knew what happened to her. Some said that she was enchanted by an evil spirit that lived in the old castle. Others believed that she was the victim of a brutal murder. The mystery of her death remained unsolved. The end of the story.